Hi, I'm Chip Stites,
And I'm Shonna Stites.
and this is the Laughing Retirement. Now, what we're going to talk about today is
We're going to give you a list of the pre-move steps. There are actually three parts to the pre-move steps. There's the preparing and gathering the documents, getting ready for your visa app. There are the financial and legal steps you need to move on. And there are the actual physical, how do I liquidate my house and move my residence physically to Italy. So these are just top level steps, and then we will go into each of them in depth as needed.
but first, we're going to talk about our favorite thing this week in Italy.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, my favorite thing, there's a chocolate festival this week in Italy. Chocolate is one of my favorite things, even though I am not supposed to have chocolate. But I have never had an Italian hot chocolate. Now, why is that? Because in Italy, when you get a hot chocolate, you get this cup full of melted chocolate.
It's
That's it.
not milk and cocoa.
It's not milk and cocoa.
No,
It's
it's
melted
hot
chocolate.
chocolate.
And this week when we were going through the chocolate fair, and there's about 15 or 20 booths, different kinds of chocolates from different places, made in different ways. Um, but there was one booth that was selling hot chocolate, but they were adding Bailey's or Di Serrano or
Amaretto, yeah.
amaretto or other liqueurs. That was a good hot chocolate. We had Di Serrano,
However, it was so rich that I had a
couple sips.
sips,
That
and
was
that was
it.
enough. So because there's no milk in it at all, it's just
It's
liquid.
just liquid
It's
chocolate
liquid
and
chocolate, and
liquor.
it's thinned with water, and that's it. My favorite story about Italy this week is we went to lunch before we went to the festival. We went to a restaurant that has no menu. This is a family-run restaurant, or you could call it a trattoria, I guess. The little waitress shows up and says, "Hi, do you speak Italian?" And we said yes. And then she rattles off the menu for the day. And so yeah, I get to choose from whatever they are preparing for the day. And so all of us got pasta. There were four of us. And then one of the owners comes by later, and he brings a big plate of pasta, big plate, like this, and a big spoon, and he just gives you seconds whether you really wanted it or not. And as far as I know, it didn't seem like we were charged extra for that, but that would not happen in the United States. So I just wanted to point out something different and fun that happened this week in Italy.
More is better when it comes to pasta and chocolate, I guess. Okay, let's work on the subject a little bit. We're going to talk about, as Shona said earlier, we're going to talk about the physical move, and we're going to talk about the financial move. So, you want to start with a physical move? You want to do that, or you
Sure,
want me to?
the steps for the physical move are number one. Um, you have to quit working. Now, if you're a couple, one of you should quit working. Or maybe you're not working, but at least 6 months. And I would say if you have a house to liquidate, it's going to be longer. A year would be better. If you have a house or business to liquidate, it needs to be longer than a year. And that is something that's necessary. If you are going to work and you're a single person, for example, and you're going to work up to within a few weeks of your departure, you're going to have to hire somebody, or you're going to have to put a big burden on someone in your family, like your mother or your sister or someone, to liquidate your household. It is a full-time job. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of things to set up and to organize and to schedule. And we sold our home 2 years before we moved. And so we only had to deal with the household things. We didn't need to deal with the home. It was already gone. But we did buy another home in the meantime.
As a rental in a different
As a
state.
rental in a different state. So those are the kinds of things that's step number one is somebody needs to stop working or you need to hire someone full-time. I would say 6 months. If you're going to work and you're going to hire somebody, it's going to take longer than 6 months because there are so many decisions that you have to make on the fly that if you've got somebody that's doing it for you and they don't know what your desires are, wants, or needs, they're going to have to contact you before they can act on something. It's going to take longer.
Is this a piece of furniture you want to keep? Is this a piece of furniture you don't want to keep? Do you want this picture, et cetera, et cetera?
Right. And I did all of that. Chip kept working. And so he really wasn't involved in much of it, except to tell me of what he wanted to, what his opinions were on things. Then you've got to have, you're going to have to realize that if you do it yourself or you hire somebody, either way, you're going to have people that help you. And you're going to have to call on friends and family if you can. If you can't, you're going to have to pay people. I hired a girl Friday and she was there with me all the time. She was a so-called organizer, I think a house organizer. And I told her what I was doing and how I wanted to do it. And I had to make a lot of decisions about our clothing, everything that was in the garage, the vehicles, the furniture, the household items, all of those things, pots and pans and dishes and paintings and whatever, all of the, hair dryers and everything. So that all had to be liquidated in my case. I didn't save too much of it. There were a few things that we did save that went to our garage at the new property that we bought out of state. And so again, it was shipping. So I had to either ship that. In my case, I actually hauled it in a small U-Haul trailer because there wasn't a lot of it that we saved. And so I had to schedule that and get that on the calendar. So that brings up something else. So you have to be prepared and look at your options for help. You're going to need help. And the second thing, investigate all of that. And then the third thing really is to buy, Chip, I thought I lost Chip there for a minute.
No, I didn't.
Is to buy a camera or buy a calendar. Now I bought a 6-month wipe off calendar, and I actually had a 12-month on the desk in the office, and I had 6 months of that 12-month calendar on the wall, and we wrote on it. And of course it with dry erase, but the dates got changed around a lot, so it has to be something you can erase and reschedule. So that's the next step. The next step after that is to decide what kinds of, or what you're going to do with your possessions. And I will go into that more in detail, but basically there's 4 options. There's auctioneer, there's consignment shops, there's estate sales, Craigslist, cleaning, people to come and clean things out and throw things away. So you're either going to sell, you're going to give it away, especially to friends and family, you're going to donate it, or you're going to throw it away. What's left is maybe you're going to ship some things for storage over there, or and you shouldn't ship a lot, and we'll talk more about that, or you're going to keep some things. And hopefully that's not very much either. So you're going to whittle your life down, because remember, you're going to start again. And then you need to think about the costs of the move. Now, if you're going to store things, you need to think about the cost of storage. Are you really going to want to pay monthly storage for things that you don't even know you have, you don't even remember you have when you're gone? So we didn't really want to do that. You're going to think about the costs for the paid help you're going to need to help you. we shipped a bunch of things and that by truck, and that costs some money. There are all kinds of costs involved in getting ready to move, and aren't just the obvious things like, yeah, I've got to find another place to live and rent an apartment in Italy, or I've got to buy a plane ticket to fly over there, or whatever. There's more to it than that, because there is money you're going to have to spend while you're in the United States getting ready to move. And then next thing you need to think about is your housing changes. And I think Chip will talk a little bit more about that. But for example, like we said, we sold our home, we moved into a rental home, and lived there for the last 2 years before we moved overseas. And then we actually bought a home, which was very comfortable for me, because I felt like I needed a place to land in case something didn't work out. And of course, we'd already investigated and felt that we knew that we could live in Italy. We knew what the cost of living was going to be compared to the cost of living where we were in the United States. And so we knew we could afford it. We had already looked into what was going to be the right fit for us, and had already picked out a town to live in. So then you're going to search after you've decided about your home changes. And I'll go into that because there's millions of ways to change your home, change your living space. And I will go through that in detail in a different video. And then you're going to think about, once you get there, you need to look for a new home. So you're going to look for an apartment, which we did online. And you'll be interested to know there are a lot of differences in renting a place in Italy. Most leases are for 4 years. So you have to work with somebody who will understand that you may not stay that long in the apartment that you rent. Of course, we felt it was temporary, and that we would be going out and investigating to see if there were other places that we wanted to live. You want to check public transportation, because most of you and we suggest that you do not take your automobile. It's really cost prohibitive to take an automobile. It's best to sell your car or cars, your vehicles in America, and buy something here. And you won't have that right away. So we knew how close we were to public transportation, within walking distance of the grocery store, all of those things. And then you want to investigate the actual neighborhood, especially if you're going to live in a city. You want to look at the neighborhood that you're going to live in. That's important. And the adjacent neighborhoods, and understand, because in Italy, it's all about the neighborhood where you live. And then you just want to know the cost of living and be aware of what that's going to be like, and maintaining the house where you live. So you're going to have, and Chip will go into this in the visa process, you'll have to have a signed lease agreement. At least we had to have one in order to include that in our visa application. So those are the things that are on my list. It was a really high-level, top-level list, and I will be making individual videos. The reason we're doing this is because we don't want these videos to go too long. We want them to be something that you can spend 10 to 15 minutes looking at every day, and not getting too committed so that it doesn't become overwhelming. Go ahead, Chip.
The first thing you want to do with finances is you want to consider eliminating as much debt as you can before you leave. That's a simple thing, because debt on a fixed income is a serious problem. You want to make sure that when you move, you're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 days to 120 days worth of cash available when you move, because it's going to take you time to set up a bank account. It's going to take time to set up a number of things. So you want to have some cash. Now, one of the ways to get that cash, if you're, say, 1 or 2 years away from moving, is to raise the deductibles on all of your insurance. Now, most of us, when we're older, have a fair amount of cash in savings, but we tend to keep lower deductibles. So one of the ways to pay less on your insurance is to raise your deductible up to the level of what you have. Let's say that you have $50,000 sitting in cash, but you've got a $2,000 deductible on your car. Why not make that deductible $10,000 and cut the cost of the car insurance in half? One example. Another thing you want to make sure of is that you have the right kind of life insurance. For instance, when you retire and leave your company, very often your company has term insurance. Well, that's fine, except that term insurance, when you're buying it at 60 or 70 years old, is rather expensive. So you want to have the right amount of whole life insurance so that you are basically taken care of in the event that there's a problem, and you want to be able to get rid of your debt so that you can have less life insurance. Wills and trusts, completed and up to date. Now, you're going to find that wills and trusts are state specific. So if you are leaving one state to go to another state, remember, your state taxes follow you even when you go overseas. So if you're living in a high state tax like we were, New Mexico, you're often better off moving somewhere else like we did to a state with lower taxes. And that is one of the things we did. But at the same time, you also need to have a will or a trust from that new state. Now, health insurance. Sometimes the health insurance you carry from your company will be usable in some portion overseas. Most of the time, probably not. You're also going to have to prove to the Italian authorities that you have health insurance for the first 6 months you're there. After you've got your permesso di soggiorno and your visa, you can join the Italian healthcare system after 6 months of living there. So that's important. We've already talked about getting your medical records, so I won't go into that. Plus, there's budgeting. What is your cost of living going to be? Well, if it's one thing in the United States, it's most likely going to be lower. Ours is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% less here than it is in the US.
We're getting ready. I remember we just got rid of our cable.
Yeah, we did. Was
it satellite or it was? Well, I can't remember.
We got rid of cable.
It was a huge expense on our monthly expenses. And I said, why? We're not even watching that much television.
So the next thing to do is to make sure you can bank overseas. For instance, if you've got a local, small, or regional bank, they may not have overseas connection. So make sure that when you use that Visa debit card that you can get cash out. Make sure that they aren't going to charge you extra every time you want to withdraw cash. And this is one of the things about living overseas that seems small, but it's not really, because it adds up rather quickly. Taxes. I've already mentioned this. If you're in a high tax state, you want to move to a state that's low tax, because there's nothing worse than moving away to Europe and having all of your state taxes at 5, 8, 10, 15% follow you. So properly position your assets. Now, we'll talk about this at a different time, but you want to make sure that your IRAs, you don't have any more 401ks, that your IRA is intact, that your Roth IRA is intact, and that basically you have as much in after tax as you can, because that's one of the few ways to lower your taxes. Do you have an international driver's license? Because if you're going to drive overseas, as particularly in Italy, the United States license is not recognized. So you need an overseas license. International license. It's not difficult to get at all. It takes half an hour and
go to AAA.
And go to AAA and there you go.
Bob's your uncle.
There you go. So that is the basics of the financial move overseas. You want to make sure you have enough cash. You want to make sure your budget is as low as possible, that you eliminate debt, and that you can bank overseas along the way, that your health insurance is up to date, and that you cancel when you leave all of your insurances, except the things you need: life insurance, health insurance. So that's about it for today. I think we've taken up about 20 minutes of your time.
Right.
And I'm Chip Stites.
I'm Shonna Stites,
And this is
the Laughing Retirement.